it, more love. There's more hope somewhere. There's more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. More hope. There's more peace somewhere. There's more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. More peace. There's more love somewhere. There's more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. More love. There's more love.
Welcome. I hope you all had a happy Christmas if you celebrate Christmas, and have had a little break if it's not your holidays. As you might be tasting, this is a year that people might be looking forward to watch ending even a little more than most. This is a light week here at Pacific Unitarian Church. We still have a Tuesday 11 o'clock call that's open with me, and one on Wednesday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon as well. And the kids' call on for January 2nd is still alive. I miss my kids if I don't get to talk to them on Saturday mornings. Probably the most important news for you is that on Saturday the 9th, coming up just a couple weeks from now, we'll begin another adult ed program, this one led by Marianne Stein. It's on essentially kind of finding and clarifying our purpose. It is part of a Blue Zones curriculum, and that's going to run for 5 weeks. So the second Saturday in January through the first Saturday in February. If you want to tune in at our normal 10 o'clock time, we're going to try to run as many adult ed programs at 10 o'clock on Saturday mornings as possible, particularly during the pandemic. It's always a nice time to think about Camp de Benneville. They're at the end of their year. They've had a rough year. They're going to have a rough next run of time too. And also we're back. We're taking a little break, as you might have noticed. It begins today. There's no 1 o'clock call on Deeper Dive race discussions, and there will not be a call next Saturday as well on the 2nd, but there will be a call. We're going to start back on that on the 10th. And it seems like that group is rounding itself into a little bit more focus of practical things as well as learning. So we're looking at a widening the circle curriculum, and we're looking at a book on magic and thinking about things in different ways. So we're beginning to head in the direction of education, but also a little bit more action as well. So good for that. We're blessed to have Khaleah Bradshaw here today, who's to my right here. She was here before. She was one of the more popular speakers on our adult ed series on race. And she's going to come talk today from the perspective of as an academic. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about the principles and the power dynamics and the politics that made 2020 such an interesting year politically, with opportunities and struggles we've really not seen in some time. So I'm going to do a reflective look back in about mid-January, and we just thought it would be a good idea. And when I asked Khaleah, who's the son of the daughter of a Nation of Islam person and the daughter of a Baptist mom, and I asked her what she wanted to preach on, she said grace and acceptance, and then that quickly got changed to a little bit more political opportunity for us. So she got her doctorate at Long Beach in educational leadership, and she has a master's in Africana studies from Cal State Dominquez Hills. Grew up in Compton and around LA. She's popular with us, and we like her. And so since your preacher is as much a teacher as a preacher, we thought we'd bring the teacher in to let her preach a little bit. So that's headed our way, and we're grateful for that. So I'm going to light the chalice, and we're going to hear from Severin and Abraham. You'll be blessed with them today. But here are the words from Janet Parsons. She says, "The flame of our chalice this morning is the symbol of our warmth and brightness of the connections we have. The flame lights our way back together again, back from our separate lives, to join us here for the promise and renewal that church is. May it be so." I'd like to gather our kids in front of the screen for the children's moment, should we have a group of kids gathered here today. As a story about making a difference. We talk about making a difference in this church a lot because two things are true that are hard to pull together for adults as well as kids. As a child, you are no more behind or ahead than your parents are on this particular question. I almost promise you, and you're probably no further ahead than I am. And here's what it is. Every little thing we do is generally one little thing, right? Whether it's your homework on Tuesday or it's even a bad thing, right? A good or bad, most of what we do is little. But the accumulated effect of that is everything that happens. So it's very easy to think that what you do doesn't matter. Because in some truth, it really doesn't matter that much, except in some moments it matters a lot. And what you do once, you tend to repeat doing a lot. So habits are important, right? That's why it's important to have a good diet. It doesn't mean you can't eat sugary cereals every once in a while. But if you eat sugary cereals all the time, it'll fast get into a bad place. So we try to develop good habits, and we try to develop good spiritual habits too. And here's this little cute story about a mouse and a dove. And there's a little mouse, and it's sort of scurrying around on the ground, and a dove flies by. Doves don't attack mice, which is good. And the mouse says to the dove, "Tell me what the weight of a snowflake is." The snow had just started to drop on this situation. And the dove said, "Nothing more than nothing," was the answer from the dove. In that case, the mouse said, "I want to watch this." And the mouse climbed up a tree and sat on a branch to see how many nothings would matter. And the mouse sat on the branch and watched every little tiny snowflake come down. This is a big snowflake, but the mouse watched all these tiny little snowflakes land on this big branch of a tree and sat there counting it. Turned into becoming a blizzard. And the mouse was pretty smart and had a good memory, and he counted to 3,741,952 snowflakes landed on the branch until that 953rd snowflake landed on the branch, and the branch came crashing down. The dove came back. The mouse had scurried safely down the tree, and the dove said, "Wow, that was an amazing thing." And the mouse said, "Yes, it took only one snowflake to turn that beautiful snowfall into the crashing of a branch." And the dove from Noah's tale flew away, and the dove thought to itself, perhaps there's only one person's voice in the world preaching peace and acting well for there to be peace across the whole world. Maybe only one more is needed for the world to be at peace during this holiday season. So I know you're going to experience in your life that things don't matter that much when you do one thing, good or bad. But just remember, it could be that one very important thing that makes the difference. And one thing sets a habit for your whole life. So as we all know, we need each other to be kind. We need each other to be good, even more than we need to be good. We need everyone to be good. So be a part of that positive change is a classic message from this church, and I hope that you hear it. Thanks. I'm going to light a candle of joy and concern for all those at the holiday season facing COVID, facing homelessness, facing candles that don't want to light, but they do. And we'll hold you in our hearts, and we miss one another being here together. Happy New Year. May this next year be collectively much better for all of us. And in that spirit, I want to share a prayer. It's from Maurice Stannard. It's called Choices. It begins. Yesterday, a friend reported a clandestine meeting, a walk with her elderly mother, careful to keep 6-foot distances as they strolled together in the sunshine. Yesterday also, schools were closed. Bars, restaurants, we no longer gather and we don't laugh together like we used to. There's no bustling crowds of strangers who might become friends. That's not this moment in time. But today, people sang together on their balconies during this holiday season. Maybe you've seen them. Meals on Wheels drivers put foods on doorknobs and waited to see if people were up and well. Today, the technology that we swore was just killing us and our kids, cell phones, all that time looking at screens and computers, they're saving us now. Letting us gather to see one another's faces, letting us gather to see the choir and people together. So tomorrow, even if too many, fewer people will sicken and die if we keep our distance during this holiday season. Imagine all the difficult choices that will result from that. So let's hold off on being together so that we can live another day, that we can live into 2021 with greater grace than this year provided. Let's take a moment of silence and usher that prayer into the hearts of all of us, that we be safe, that we wear our mask, that we be as prudent, so in the future we don't need to be quite so prudent. Amen. Our reading today is from Khaleah Parker from Becoming. It's a UU publication around navigating adulthood for young UUs. And I like this prayer because Khaleah is going to share with us sort of a reflective year on 2020, and I wanted to sort of pull in the dreamy possibilities that exist in this next year that a pandemic and this kind of chaos brings. So this prayer captures that spirit pretty well. Dear great lathe of heaven, O foundry of souls, you churning, burning cosmos which has wrought me on the infinite loom of your celestial body. Spinning stars and indifferent stones, hear my prayer. Do not curse me to perish with all my dreams fulfilled. Hear that. Do not curse me to perish with all my dreams fulfilled. Do not afflict me with a vision so narrow and a heart so small that all my greatest hopes could be accomplished within a single lifetime. Anoint me with impertinent oils. Grant me dreams so great and numerous that I might spend the fullness of my days to realize them, and have ample remaining to leave to my inheritors. Holy gear that bore me and will one day take me home, allow me the mercy to depart this life with unfinished business, the business of justice, the business of a better world. Amen. Khaleah.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful prayer. Good afternoon. First, let me begin by saying thank you. It's an honor to be here and an even bigger honor to be invited back again. I don't take opportunities like this for granted. To be able to share space and talk about things that I find important, it is a real honor. You know, the last time I was here was on November 7th. The morning I arrived, we had all just heard the news about the election results. I think I had made a comment in my remarks that day about being tired of seeing that map on CNN. Little did I know, and did we all know at that time, that we would continue to see it for a few more weeks. But what that day represented for me and for so many others across this country was a slither of some very much needed hope. Hope for change and just hope for difference of what we had been currently going through at that time. It's, needless to say that the entire sort of last 3.5 to 4 years has taken a toll on many of us. But in some ways, 2020 has taken a different toll on us in a different way. I jokingly say to some of my friends that 2020, the 1 year, feels like 4 years in one. And it was this massive buildup that just hit us so hard in both physical and mental ways that we were not prepared for. And I know I'm not alone when I say that. In the next several moments or so, I want to talk about race. I want to talk about this year, 2020, and the fact that this is just the beginning in so many ways. The idea of trying to analyze all of 2020 is very daunting. I tried it and I don't recommend it, especially don't do it alone. There were so many deaths, from Kobe to Sean Connery to Kirk Douglas to RBG to civil rights leader John Lewis. And in between the politics and COVID, there were these updates that the news would cover of these shocking celebrity and famous deaths. Without going through each incident one by one, we can all think of probably a dozen events that have completely shifted our thought process this year. And sadly, those were not the only famous deaths, unfortunately. Probably the most noted for this year is that of George Floyd, who many say is what sparked the international protests and set off a year of social justice warriors all over the world to begin demanding justice for Black people in America. On May 25th of 2020, for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, America watched a Black man die literally in the arms of a police officer in Minneapolis. From there, we were sent to Glenn County, Georgia, where we saw footage of Ahmaud Arbery, who was jogging, get harassed and then shot by 2 armed white men. What we didn't know at the time was that that footage was already 3 months old. It had just only become recently available. In the third incident of the spring in Kentucky, we learned of Breonna Taylor's murder. Again, 3-month-old footage where we had just found out. These 3 deaths of spring 2020 are the catalyst for which much of this year has set out to do. I would like for all of you to consider the following. 2020 was a year to do better, but what will 2021 be? We all know there were far more deaths than just the ones that I named. Even recently, the death of unarmed Black people continue. And I hate to admit that in many ways, I have become desensitized to them. This year has been way too crazy. But as it comes to a close in the next few days, what are your takeaways that will prepare you for 2021? James Baldwin said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." I'm going to say that again. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. We were forced to face with a lot this year. I heard someone say that 2020 has been a mirror. As we have been forced to sit at home to be safe and protect others, there has been something quite revealing in those quiet moments. And I can speak for myself and say those quiet moments were things that I had been running from and ignoring. We have been in a national pandemic since March due to COVID-19. And each month that has passed provided more clarity and confusion about the disease. While this health pandemic has been going on, there has also been a social pandemic. We have been forced to deal with racial violence, social and environmental injustices, and a serious divide between race and class as it relates to our country's current political climate. And if that's not enough, we all have been dealing with our own personal lives. Just regular life that still continued to go on. In my own life, I lost my aunt to dementia in August. My best friend had a baby on Election Day that I still have not seen. And I received my doctorate degree in May, which seems like years ago. Like I said, life definitely goes on, and it has for everyone as well. In the midst of these crazy times, life is still happening. I was interviewed for a project last Saturday, and I was asked to fill in the blank. 2020 taught me. The first thing that came to my mind was 2020 taught me to sit still. And in that stillness, I discovered some things that I need to work on. But 2020 has also taught me compassion. I have realized that in my day-to-day hustle and bustle of life, that I rarely slow down enough to express compassion toward others and their situations. And in line with the pandemic and race issues of this year, I have learned to be far more compassionate toward others looking to learn and lend allyship. I don't think I would have been as open and compassionate toward people who, for the first time, are stepping up and learning to be a part of this fight. So in the midst of everything that is happening around us, I feel like God revealed some very valuable and timely lessons for myself, lessons I would not have learned otherwise. I would like to share a few thoughts on the politics, principles, and power dynamics of 2020. First, the political climate that was brewing for 3 years came to a head this year. There was no escaping it. It was everywhere. It flooded social media. It has been the only thing covered on the news aside from COVID-19 updates. If you take a moment and think, the news would switch from politics or Trump to COVID. This has probably been the most mentally unhealthy news cycle ever. I think we laugh and joke about it, but consuming all this does impact our health. Not just our physical health, but our personal relationships as well. I find myself traveling in much smaller circles these days because of pure exhaustion that politics has taken on many of my relationships. And because everything, including our health and safety, has become politicized, there's really just not much room for other things. Principle is defined as a fundamental truth that serves as a foundation for reason or meaning. I think I can say with some confidence that this year has shaken many people's principles, myself included. We live in a time where immediate exposure is the norm. And because of smartphones and the capabilities to not only record, but record and send anywhere worldwide within seconds, everything is shoved in our faces for our own expert analysis. But are we experts? For many who have never had to question police authority, the George Floyd film has shaken strong principles that people believed in. The verdict of the officers involved in Breonna Taylor's murder also shifted some principles. Some probably weren't even aware that the principles they believed in were so deeply rooted. For many people, myself included, 2020 has taught me to review my principles. What do I believe in and why? If principle means fundamental truth, then what are the fundamental truths of America? What are the fundamental truths for me as a Black woman in America? I shared with you all last time that my boyfriend is Nigerian and he's preparing to travel back home. And whenever he tells me stories about Nigeria, I'm always like, why did you come here again? Because it just always sounds so different and so perfect, right? Everything is better than what we have here. Then he begins to tell me all of the opportunities that America has, things that I often need to be reminded of course. Especially this year, those reminders have been more prevalent and have hit in a different way. For me, the shift has been to remind myself that my principles need to be in things beyond the government. My faith, my family, God, spiritual being. Those are the things that are deeply rooted and far less wavering than my hope in the government. I had a favorite Bible verse growing up that said, "Count it all joy when you fall into various temptations." And at the beginning of the pandemic, I kept saying, I am focused on the silver lining, which I was. My parents were healthy. I still had my job. I was able to work from home. There really was nothing to complain about. As I mentioned earlier, slowing down was necessary for me. So every time I started to complain about the pandemic or any bad news, I was captain of the silver lining team. That shifted into attitude of gratitude. Then that shifted into count your blessings. So all my friends were teasing me because I had these cliches all the time. I have just been queen of the cliche statements this year. And just like that verse says, no matter what, count it all joy. Having my principles safe and unwavering, reassessing that and knowing for sure what is important to me, that has been one of the biggest lessons of all this year. Finally, power dynamics. For months, we have seen politicians boast of who is in charge. We've seen it all over the news. There have been fights and Twitter battles over power. Power is very dangerous because it is closely linked to pride and ego. 2020 has revealed a lot about power dynamics. The dynamics of power have a lot to do with race and class. Many Black people, people of color, and lower class people are feeling very powerless this year. Even with the win of Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, that does not change much of the day-to-day for people of color who remain relatively low on the list of priorities. As I thought about returning here today, I had so much happiness reflecting on our last chat, the Q&A time we had, and the conversations I had with many of you, particularly Jean. She and I emailed after the last time I was here, and I was affirmed and beautifully reminded of the power of allyship. I was so amazed by this place and the intentional work you all are doing this year when it comes to race relations. I told all my friends, you would not believe this place and where it exists. It's beautiful, and the people are beautiful. You should all be very proud, and I hope you all know what a lasting impression that you have made on me. The signature in Jean's email says, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, then the world will know peace. It's such a simple statement, and I say it over and over to myself because it's so beautiful. Sometimes we become so obsessed with power and who's in charge, when really what we need is a huge dose of love, and to become more obsessed with the idea of sharing and spreading love, and less obsessed with this idea of power, control, and who's in charge. Because I think one of the biggest things we've all learned this year is that we are not in charge. So many things have happened to us and around us that are completely out of our control. So when the power of love overcomes the love of power, then the world will know peace. How's that for a power dynamic? Love should be the focus, not power. All of these things, politics, principles, and power, in the context of this year, 2020, it can all lead to fatigue. Social justice trauma is real. We are still in this fight. The election in Georgia, all of these things that dragged on far beyond than what we thought. And there are some people who still believe that the election results were wrong, and we've had to deal with all of those things as well. This month, I unplugged quite a bit from politics. I started watching Christmas movies the night of Thanksgiving. The cornier, the better. I found myself quite exhausted from the work of this year. Earlier, I asked you, what will 2021 be for you? There are some things that we already know. We know we will still be dealing with COVID and this pandemic. We know that many people will still be unemployed and struggling. Will it make a difference knowing these things in advance? At midnight last year, we walked into January as optimistic as ever. I feel better prepared knowing 2021 is going to begin a lot how 2020 is ending, but that doesn't have to be a negative thing. And it doesn't have to be a reflection of our personal testimonies and the growth that we've all experienced this year. We can continue the good work and great lessons we have learned this year. There will still be racism in 2021, so that means there's still a need for allies and friends. These next couple days should be filled with re-energizing and preparing for a new year with new goals. They should be spent safely doing the things that bring you joy and happiness. It is easy to be down and sad and heavy burdened with how this year has gone. It is truly something to mourn about. And for many people, I've encouraged them to grieve the things that have happened this year. I've had to take some time and space to grieve the things that I was expecting that didn't go my way, cry it out, experience those things, and feel all of the feels that are necessary. But there is still so much to be thankful and happy about. Give yourself the space and the grace that you need. Be good to yourself. Take care of your soul. Restore yourself. Be a friend to the friendless. Even though it may not seem like it, an act of kindness for someone who does not look like you can go a very long way. Thank you for your work and your advocacy. I appreciate your time, and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Khaleah. We should clap or something, you know? That was good. Thank you. It's hard not to be sterile in an environment where you're simply being taped, right? So that was beautiful and thoughtful, and thanks. Khaleah wouldn't know that we usually have a silly story for the offertory. And here's my silly story for today. It comes from the Scottish tradition of lying stories to raise money. And there's a shy lad and lass, and they're religious and they're conservative people, and they're sitting on a stone wall and they're gazing out over the loch or the lake. For several minutes they sat silently. Then finally the girl looks at the boy and says, a penny for your thoughts, Ian. Well, Ian says, I was thinking it's about time for a wee kiss. The girl blushed and leaned over and kissed him lightly on the cheek, and he blushed too. The two turned once again for some silence to stare out at the beautiful Scottish lake. A couple more moments passed later, and the girl spoke again. What's on your mind, Ian? Another penny for your thoughts. Well, I was thinking perhaps now is a time for a wee cuddle. The girl blushed and then leaned over, and they hugged each other for a few seconds to returning to their more stoic spots, gazing out over the lake again. After a while, she said, one more penny for your thoughts, Ian. Well, Ian says, I was thinking it was about a time you let me put me hand on your leg. And the girl blushed and took his hand and put it on her knee, and they sort of sat there for a minute, and then they returned to gaze apart, returned to their little private spaces. And the girl spoke up and said, one more penny for your thoughts, Ian. And the young man pierced down with a glancing blow. Well, I think it's about time you paid me for the first 3 pennies, don't you think? So we asked that you be more generous than that. And over to Abraham and Severin.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we'll walk hand in hand someday. We shall all be free. We shall all be free. We shall all be free.
In closing out this year, 2020, let us remember that this church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all of our differences, beneath all of our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together, in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. We pause in silent witness to that unity.
May the blessing of love be upon you. May love's peace abide with you. May love's presence illuminate your hearts, now and forevermore. So be it. Amen. Shalom. Salam. Namaste. Blessed be. And now our service truly begins.
We wanted to give you a view out our back window there. That's looking up into Malibu Hills over the South Bay. Thank you for Gary and Leanne, and take it away, Abraham and Severin.
I was born by the river in a little tent, oh, just like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. I go to the movies and I go downtown. Somebody keep telling me don't you hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Then I go to my brother and I say, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Lord, there have been times that I thought I couldn't last for long. Now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it must now. Yes, I know change gonna come. Yes, I know change gonna come.